Verbally Effective, your double E, Ina Esco here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to yet another episode of the Verbally Effective podcast. I see a lot of you guys out there getting back in them streets on Instagram, on Facebook. Recently, the governor of Tennessee, I know he lifted some of those restrictions, but you guys be careful out there. I'm excited today because I have one of my beautiful sorors on the podcast with me. She is a writer, a programming expert, the director of program development for Bridges. She's a plant mom. And you know what? She came to our podcasting one-on-one workshop a couple of years back. Was it like 2 years now? And so
it has been.
See where she is with the podcast life too. I have Meridith Rucker on the podcast with me. What's up, Meridith? How are you, soror?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited and honestly really, really humbled at the invitation. So thank you so much. I'm really excited about it and I'm doing well and it's good things going on. So I'm good.
A lot of good things. Now, I remember meeting you a while back. It was during a Lemoyne College homecoming. I interviewed your mom with the radio station, and we've been knowing each other for a while. And so much has happened between now and then. So today is all about you, Meridith, and your journey. And I know you just recently received the Memphis Business Journal Top 40 Under 40. I know that's exciting.
It is. It's really exciting. It's, one of the things that I've thought about for a long time with Memphis, which is something that I appreciate with MBJ and with Cynthia Daniels and the work that she does in honoring young professionals, is just that we have so much talent in our city and we have so much talent from our city. And then, we have people who aren't from Memphis, but they move here and they dedicate their time and their talents. And so, I just think that's something really, really positive that we do here. I think it's nice for people. Sometimes, you, depending on what kind of career that you're in, everything isn't always, you don't always get, we're so used to instant gratification, or you don't always get instant feedback. And so, you can work for years and not really know, like, is what I'm doing, is it making a difference? Is it cool? Like, am I doing the right thing? And so, you don't always, I think sometimes people have like a negative opinion sometimes of recognition and being honored for things. And certainly you shouldn't do what you do for recognition, but I do think that it's nice for someone to take the time and acknowledge and say, hey, like, we like the work that you're doing and we think it's meaningful and, we think it's cool. And so definitely excited and honored to be a part of that. And shout out to all the other honorees, who are being honored. And so we have an event that's going to be on May 5th. That's at Shelby Farms Park. And
so you guys are actually going to get together and congregate.
Yeah. So it's going to be something, it's going to be outdoors and it's going to be socially distanced. And I think everybody is supposed to bring, their own chairs and, whatever they're going to have. So I don't know what's going to happen there beyond that, but that's going to be on May 5th at Shelby Farms. And I think it's from 5 to 7 or something like that.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. Also great that you guys are getting your flowers while you are still here. So many, so often people are no longer with us, and then that's when we recognize the work that they do. So I think that is great, and congratulations. But let's start at the beginning, Meridith. What part of Memphis are you from?
South Memphis. That's where my roots are on both sides of my family. And so my mom's roots in the Riverside area, my dad's in the Longview Heights area. And so actually for a period of time, my dad's family lived not far from my mom's family. So both of my parents went to Carver. Let's see. I was born here, primarily raised here. We spent a brief period in St. Louis. I was very young, I don't remember. And I started elementary school in Nevada, in Reno, which was, different. How we see and view things today are shaped by a lot of our childhood experiences. And back in the early 80s, there just were no Black people in Nevada like that. Not in Reno. It was to the point that when we were walking down the street, I remember this as a child, like if we saw another Black family, like we would go up and introduce ourselves, because that's just how rare and few and far in between that you would see another Black family. And so I dealt with a lot of racism in school as a child. And so,
and you remember that?
I remember it like it was yesterday. I got called the N-word several times. I got spat on. I changed schools. Yeah, I changed schools like 3 times. And so, yeah, it's important to me to be doing the work that I do today at Bridges, because, those kinds of experiences, those are real things that happen. And I hate that, here some odd, almost 40 years later, we're still seeing children, experiencing those same things. But that just means that there's still more work to be done. So
wow,
spend some time out there, came back, and then from then on, I was here in Memphis. And so I went to some Montessori schools in Whitehaven. And then I ended up at Harding. So I graduated from high school at Harding. And
did you like Harding?
So academically at that time, Harding was great. So I needed a lot of, I was a nerd, I still am. I needed a lot of academic rigor, and academically Harding was great. I learned a lot. I still things today I can attribute to that education. And I didn't appreciate it at the time, but as an adult, I appreciate the Christian education. I appreciate that foundation now. I don't think I thought much about it then. But as an adult, there are still things that I recall learning then that I appreciate. Socially, socially was a little bit different. I was blessed to have a group of girlfriends, another group of Black girls that, I met in 7th grade when I started Harding. We're still friends, best friends to this day. There's 5 of us. And so that to me is the biggest blessing that I got. But beyond my group, I mean, it was okay. I dealt with a lot of racism at Harding, and it's interesting because within our friend group, I think we all kind of had different experiences. And what I have found is that those Black students at that time who were, I'm trying to say this in the right way. The more involved you were and the more you were potentially perceived as a quote unquote threat, or taking something else away from somebody else. Like if you came and you went to school and you pretty much went home, like you didn't really have any problems. But if you were there, you were on student council, you were in the choir, you were on the track team, you were on the tennis team, it was an issue. And so I had issues because I was that student. I'm like, hey, I'm here. I'm gonna get it, whatever I am. I'm gonna get all of it. And so I had issues. And the biggest issue I had there, which is one of the biggest, really the biggest regret I think of my life, and I don't really talk about much, but I said I was going to write a blog about it. I used to play tennis. I was a tennis player, and I was actually very, very good. And so I played tennis long before I went to Harding. I got to Harding, and the first couple of years were good. That 3rd year, we got a different coach, and man, she was so racist. She was so racist. And it's like I went from being the top seeded player to like she moved me to the bottom of the team. I was a singles player primarily. She would only let me play doubles.
Wow.
And it's just she did everything she could to break me. And at that time, I really didn't have the tools to know how to A, really speak up for myself, and B, be at a point where I can be like, well, forget you. If you got a problem with me, I'm still going to do what I need to do. I was in high school. I wanted to have a good time. I wanted to be happy. And it was depressing me. And so I quit. Like, I quit.
What did your parents say about that, Meredith?
You know,
what was going on? What did they say?
By that time, my parents divorced. So by that time, I think my parents maybe had divorced 2 years prior to that. And so I was always a kid that internalized things. Like, my parents raised me to be really independent. And I honestly think I'm independent to a fault. Like, it's still, I'm still learning how to ask for help, like when I need it. And I think at the time I was just internalizing it and just trying to figure it out or like sort through it on my own. And then I think that at some point, my mom kind of noticed. She was just like, well, I wasn't telling nobody to come to any games. She was like, well, what's going on? And I finally told her, and she was like so upset. But yeah, I think I just was internalizing a lot of it. And I think by that time I was like, man, we had one last tournament. I was like, when this tournament is over, like, I'm done. I'm not playing anymore. And I'm embarrassed to say that, like, I think I was a freshman or sophomore. I can't remember. I think a freshman. And I hadn't played tennis since.
What?
I quit.
That
I like it. It did. It really, really did. And I hate that I did that, because it was a game that I was good at, and it was a game that I really enjoyed, but it was just like, I can't.
What about now, though, Meredith? You could pick up a tennis racket and go out there and do your thing.
I've thought about it. I have thought about it. And my youngest, he's expressed interest in playing tennis, so I might get out there with him and learn all over again.
To your old love. You know what? Similar to you, I experienced racism. I was a volleyball player. I was good too. All state. Went to Millington my last year. Ooh, that coach was so racist. Do you hear me? So I can empathize with you.
Yeah.
I can empathize with you.
I hate that. And, I think what I would want to tell, like, younger people who find themselves in that position, is, even if you feel like that team or that coach or where you are in that moment isn't right, like, don't give up the game, or don't give up the hobby, or don't, if it's piano, if it's tennis, if it's football, if it's art, whatever it is, don't let somebody else take your passion away from you, especially if it's something that you're good at, because you never know where that might take you. And so, I think it's hard. It's hard. It's hard for younger people to navigate. It's hard for adults to navigate, but I'm really, at this point, really big on, it can be hard to learn how to speak up for yourself, but at least until you get to that point, don't let somebody take something away from you that's important to you.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why, and the other part of that finding your voice and learning those tools that I didn't feel like I necessarily had at that time, is like one of the reasons why, working with youth, and even in getting my yoga certification in yoga and meditation and mindfulness, that's why those things are so important to me. Like, I want younger people to be able to have those tools, so when those challenges come along, like, how to deal with them, and how to handle them. If I had different tools, I could have been like, listen, I know this woman hate me, and she doesn't think I'm worth anything, but I think I'm worth something, and I think I deserve to be here. Okay. And so I just think that we have so much that we can give to our youth, that can set them up for a better and happy, positive adult life. So
definitely. Wow. Yeah. Well, look, Meredith, if you want to go swing a few rounds, you let me know. I know how to swing that racket a little bit, but I know I'm not as good as you. But
girl, I hadn't played tennis in so long.
It's okay. All we need is support. There are plenty out here. Okay, let's segue a bit into college life. How did you decide to go to Tennessee State University, HBCU, baby?
Funny story. it was very serendipitous, honestly. Like, I know from my mother, both of my parents are huge advocates of HBUs, but especially my mom. And being that I, been in private school, and she was just like, I don't care what HBCU you go to, pick one. Like, there are hundreds, but you got to go to, an HBCU. And she was very adamant about that. And so my top three choices at the time were like Spelman, just because of Spelman, and then Clark, because I was interested in communications. Clark always had a really great communications program. And then FAMU, because there was a part of me that thought about, maybe I'll, go into business like my dad. And FAMU had a really great business program at the time. So those are my top three choices. I ended up applying to a lot of in-state schools, like Vanderbilt and UT Chad, and of course Memphis, and got into Spelman. And so that was the plan. The plan was for me to go to Spelman. I had a best friend from home who was going to Spelman, and we went down to Spellbound, and we had a great time. And, I turned in my deposit and all that, and that was the plan. And then, I applied to Tennessee State, and I went to visit Tennessee State with another best friend. And I kind of, fresh from going to the Southern Heritage Classics, that's why TSU was on my radar. And I went and stepped on that campus, and it was just like,
that's it.
It was like, this is different. This is different. This is home. And so I had to call them people back at Spelman and tell them I changed my mind. I know they're probably like, you gonna not come to Spelman and go to state school.
Yeah,
but that's just, it was just a vibe. It always has been. And that was one of the best decisions that I ever made. I mean, I had such an amazing college experience. I have so many great friends. And I wrote about that. I was a contributing author in this book that came out a year ago this month. The HBCU Experience, Tennessee State University edition. And so I talked about that. I talked about like how I ended up at Tennessee State, and how it was just been such a magical experience, and it continues to be. So that's how I got to TSU. Had a really great time. I did SGA and NAACP and a lot of stuff like that. I pledged there, and it was great. I'm getting together with my line sisters in like 2 weeks. Some of my line sisters, we gonna go and get an Airbnb, and we hadn't, nobody's seen each other in so long. So, I'm excited about that.
Yes. Now, I know that you were a radio and television communications major. Why did you decide that, Meridith?
In high school, I was a debutante in high school. I was a Lynx Deb, and I think we had like some videos or something that we had to record for our cotillion. And we had been sitting in this room doing these recordings, and it was taking everybody like 15 and 20 takes to do their video. And I was the only person that did mine in one take. Okay, and they were like, oh, you need to try radio and television. And I was like, really? Okay, I'll think about it. And so I did a little research on it, and it was a good fit for me. That was a good major for me. What I ultimately transitioned into journalism because, the writing side of it was the draw for me to choose communications as a major. And while I was there, I got really involved with the campus newspaper, and writing is something that I've done since I was a child. And so that, for me, kind of led me to figure out, okay, I think the writing side is a better fit for me. Mm-hmm. And so that's why when I went to grad school, I switched to journalism, print. So
yes. Wow. Okay. So once you graduated from TSU, what happened for you, Meridith?
So I think, being young back then, it was just kind of like graduation was approaching, and I don't think I had really decided what I wanted to do. And I was pretty sure I wanted to go to grad school, but I only applied to NYU in Northwestern. I was like, if I'm going to journalism school, I only want to go to NYU or Northwestern. And so I remember everybody being like, girl, you don't want to apply to some safe schools. I was like, well, I mean, if I don't get in, then, you know, I'll just do something else. And so I got waitlisted at Northwestern and I got accepted at NYU. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to NYU. And so I went there. I had never been to New York before. Let's start there. So
Yes, a big
that was
culture shock.
interesting. The only reason that it wasn't was because I studied abroad at Tennessee State. I spent like 4 months in Spain. And so that was my first exposure to like a pedestrian city where you rode the bus and you took the subway and all that. So that helped me with kind of how things move in a bigger city. And so the culture shock part was like trying to find an apartment. Like, who knew that you can just go to like an apartment complex and be like, oh, you have units and let me look. It's a madhouse. It's like buying a condo, or it's like buying a house. It's so competitive, and even back then it was so expensive. So that part was a shock, and it took a lot of effort for me to find a place to live. So I got there, I started graduate school, and I think the year that I started, right when I started, around the time, it might have been the 4th or 5th anniversary of 9/11.
Oh, wow.
And so that was like one of my first reporting things in J school. It was like, oh, go to ground zero and come up with a story. And I was like, oh, ground zero, okay.
Wow.
But it was really interesting. NYU was great. About halfway through my time in school, or maybe second semester, I got an internship at CosmoGIRL. And I had applied for a few different things. At that time, I was trying to figure out like what's my niche going to be. So at the time, I was really interested in like music journalism. I had grown up reading Vibe and XXL and all that, and so I thought that was the route that I wanted to go. So I had applied for internship in Vibe and CosmoGIRL because I was also still interested in youth, and a few other places. And I got an interview with Vibe and with CosmoGIRL, and they ended up at CosmoGIRL given, at that time it was a web intern position. They ended up giving that to somebody else, and then they offered me the Vibe internship, but it was so like that whole culture operates so different. I mean, you know, like it's a different kind of thing. I think they called me at like 11 p.m. for the interview, and I was like, 11 p.m. Like that's just, you know,
Really?
that's a little different. You know, it's a little different. But they were really, you know, they were super nice. So I did my phone interview. I went in, I did the interview. They offered me the internship. But then I got a call back from CosmoGIRL, and they were like, hey, our senior editor is looking for an intern. We know you didn't get the other one, but our senior editor is looking for an intern. She's a woman of color, and she's particularly interested in having interns of color.
Okay.
And she was the senior editor at that time, and she was like, are you interested in intern? I was like, yes. You know? Okay. And so that's how I ended up at CosmoGIRL, and I was working for Kierna Mayo. And so she kind of became like my mentor, and Kierna's the founder of Honey Magazine. So she and Joycelyn Dingle founded Honey Magazine. She used to, you know, she came up through the ranks at XXL as an editor. So I can't rattle off her resume. She's just amazing. But she ended up being my mentor. And so when a position became available at Cosmo, she was like, you really need to go for it. And I was like, man, I hadn't been here that long. I'm still in journalism school. Like, you know, I'm just a girl from Tennessee. I don't know. And she was like, no, go for it. And I went for it, and I got it. And so I appreciate her so much still to this day. And it's really a testament too of how representation really does matter. Like, think about that. Like, I applied for this interview for this position. I didn't get it, but I did well enough to where somebody mentioned my name. And because there was a Black woman there on staff who knows how important it is knows how hard it is to get in the door, and knows how important it is to give other, you know, young Black people opportunity. Like, she was like, oh, if she's a young Black girl, like I want my interns, you know, to be interns of color. And so that enabled me to get that opportunity that, you know, that launched my career really in New York. And so it's so important. And I, you know, as much as we can do that, you know, I applaud people who can offer opportunities to people coming behind them, because that's what it's all about. And it's enough room at the table for everybody. Everybody has their own talents and things to bring. And so I love her and I appreciate her for that. I haven't seen her in so long. She's got 2 boys just like me too. And so her boys are so much older now. But when I started, they were a little bit younger than my sons are now. So shout out to Kieran Mayo.
Wow. You know what, Meredith, with you going to CosmoGIRL, it sounds like you had a pleasant experience. Did you face any adversity in that role?
Yeah, I did. So for the most part, it was a really great experience. So when I got hired, I was working for Ann Choquette, who at the time was the executive editor. We had a great working experience. She's a New York native. She went to NYU as well. But after I had been there for about a year, she interviewed and was selected to be the editor-in-chief of 17. So I was her assistant. She asked me, she said, hey, do you want to come to 17 with me? I would love to have you. Now, at that time, and she was honest and straight up, and I shout out to Ann Choquette. I love Ann. Ann was honest and she was straight up with me, and she was like, now, I know you're doing a lot of writing right now, which I was, but she was like, me coming into the door being new, I'm really going to need you to focus on more assistant work. Like, is that okay with you? And at the time, I was like, I was doing well. I was writing. I had my own column. I had an environmental column that, you know, that was the magazine's first monthly column. It was an environmental column. And so I don't remember how young I was, but I might have been like 23 or 24, something like that. I was like, I appreciate it. And, you know, I thank you so much, but I decided to stay where I was. And so, and at this time, Kieran had moved on. She was no longer still there. And so I decided to stay where I was. And my new boss, and you know, she had been really great about me because I was still in school. I was still a full-time journalism student. And that new lady that I worked with, and I had, mind you, I was an intern there. I beat out like hundreds of people to get that job. I had never had any issues. My work was good. I had a good relationship with my boss and everybody there. After being a week with this other woman, and she was there, and I didn't know that I had an issue with her either, but I had only been working for her for a week, and I got a call from HR. And I got called into HR, and HR said, hey, we just got a call from your boss, and we wanted to talk to you about some issues that she's been having with your work. Now, mind you, I'm like, what's happening? Like, what is going on? Because again, like I told you, like I had never had any complaints about my work. My work was good. Like I had never had any issue. And then after being with a new boss for a week, you know, I was down in HR. She hadn't said anything to me, you know, and it was extremely upsetting. And so I ended up talking to her. She was like, yeah, I just don't think you're doing as good as, you know, you should be. And I remember thinking in my head, like, you know me, and I've been here all this time. I've never had an issue with you. Why are you making it an issue now? And she was like, and also you're not going to be able to have your time in the afternoon to go to school. So you have to decide if you're going to stop school and work here. No, and I said, I'll never forget it. And I was just like, I remember sitting there in her office and thinking in my head, okay, I see what's happening. Like, you want me to leave. Like, you want to hire me. You don't, you know, it's just, it's, you know, it just is what it is. And I remember going back to HR, because by this point, you know, I was a little bit more sure of myself. And I was like, okay, I'm going to speak up. I was like, this is not right. Like, and even as a young person then, I was like, she never said anything to me. I'm like, I don't think I should have been called into HR, particularly if she hasn't addressed it with me personally, giving me a chance to fix it. I'm like, all of a sudden I'm in HR. I said, I don't think this is professional. I think it's personal. And that HR woman was like, oh no, not her. She's really nice and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, okay,
So
y'all.
did it seem like HR had her back, not the employee?
Completely.
Uh,
And I remember calling my parents and telling them, I was like, hey, I think I'm about to quit my job because, you know, I don't want to be here and you're constantly trying to make things hard for me. I want to leave on a good note. I know I've done good work. I don't want it to turn into something else. I don't want you to try to change my narrative. And then I'm not quitting school. And so,
right.
because Anne, you know, she had her master's, and this woman, I don't even think she had an advanced degree. And I was like, I'm not gonna stop going to school to sit around here for you to, you know, give me problems and give me issues because you don't even want me to be here. And so I was real sad. That hurt me because I was the first person in my J school class to get an on staff journalism position. I was the first person in my class to get hired. It was a really huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really, really sad to leave that job, but I left it.
You put your 2 weeks in.
I did.
They try to counter?
They did not, but Anne, when she found out what happened, she did call me back and she said, I heard what happened. Like the offer still stands. If you want to come to 17, you can still come. Mm-hmm. And I turned it down. I was like, I appreciate her for that. But I said, no, I'm going to focus on school. I'm going to finish school and something else will come. And so, but I kept in touch with her and we, you know, we kind of keep in touch now a little bit here and there on Instagram, but I went and I finished my degree. And in the meantime, I was just working there was a boutique like a few blocks from my apartment. So I got me a little job and I finished school. And so I ended up getting hired at Soap Opera Weekly, which was it was a different publishing company. So at the time in New York, like Hearst and Condé Nast were the two biggest, you know, companies, and CosmoGIRL was at Hearst. So this was a smaller publication company. And it was it was a completely different vibe. You know, Hearst was real like Devil Wears Prada-ish. This place was a lot more laid back. Mm-hmm. And just a completely different vibe. But it was a really cool job. Like my show was Guiding Light, and I love
the Guiding Light when I used to watch it back then. Look, when your mama made you watch it.
Yeah, so I got to, you know, that was my job, keeping up with the show, and you know, interviewing the actors on the show and writing about. So that was cool. And I grew up watching, like a lot of young people grew up watching soap operas with my grandparents, at least in the South, and so you know, that works to my advantage there. And then because it was a small company and I had come from CosmoGIRL, that company was launching a teen magazine. And so I got the opportunity to launch that magazine with them that actually did really well, Pixie Magazine at the time. So
wow.
A lot of those magazines are like defunct now because it's all about digital and, you know.
So you've seen the entire landscape of digital transform in your writing career. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Now let me ask you this, Meridith. What is the biggest lesson that you learned while living in New York?
Ooh. My. The biggest lesson that I learned while living in New York. I think maybe building relationships. I'm big on relationship building, and in a genuine way. I know coming up, everybody, you know, used to talk a lot in college and underground, network. And networking, it just, I don't know, something about it just never really, I know it's important, but it just never really quite felt like natural to me. I'm naturally an introvert, and people are surprised to hear me say that, but I really am. I'm actually incredibly shy. And so I'm not the kind of person that's going to be at an event and walk up and introduce myself to somebody. I don't know that I've ever done that in my life. Like usually, it just kind of happens and I can have a conversation. I enjoy talking, but I'm just not I'm not the aggressive or like assertive, networking kind of person. But I do believe in building relationships, and I believe in when you have the opportunity to spend time with someone or get to know them, like get to know people, get to know what's important to them, get to know what they like, be genuine. And I think that goes a long way. And so it's like this concept of less about reaching out to or trying to get to know people because you need something, and more about doing it because just you're interested in that person as a human, and you're interested in what you might have in common, and you genuinely want to know, like, what are your thoughts, or what are your hobbies, or you just get to know people. Like, take some time to get to know people, build relationships. I think that's important personally. I think it's important professionally. And so that's something that I think that I learned in New York, and in building and then maintaining them, right? So it takes a little work sometimes. Like sometimes it takes, you having to think about, reach out to people, check on people, see how they're doing, like I hate when people only call me when they want something. And I'm not even, I say that very like base level, because it's not like I have like a whole lot. Like I'm not famous. I don't have like a ton of resources. So it's not like people, but there are still some people that is like, I don't hear from you unless like you want me to put a word in or something for you or not. But like, whereas like those people who I have natural relationships with, like I'm keeping my ear open. I'm mentioning their name when they're not around, just because like we have a relationship, and like I want you to win, and I want you to have opportunity, and I want that because there are people that I have relationships with. And so I think that genuine relationships is especially in a place in New York and working in corporate is a different beast.
Yeah.
And so it can be hard to navigate, but I think building relationships are really important.
Yes, ma'am. Now let's fast forward to today. A lot going on today with you, with the world, this pandemic. I mean, we are all adjusting right now. Let's talk about your work over here at Bridges as the Director of Program Development. Tell me about your role. What exactly do you do in this particular role?
So I am, so my area, program development, includes our training, and it also includes our evaluation team. And so my job is to come up with programming for our youth at all three of our levels. And so we have a Connect level, which is where we are providing programming for schools or for other nonprofits. And so we're going out into the community, or we have people who come into the center who have requested, like, we would like for an experience on on team building, or we would like something on body positivity. And so they have requests or specific needs, and so we're tailoring programming to those specific needs that they have. That's our shortest touch program with the highest volume of students. So we serve the most students there, but it's not a continual program. It's usually like a 1 or 2 touch thing that we do. So then our middle level collaborate is what most people know. So those are that's our year-long program, and that starts off with our summer conferences. And so we have our summer conferences, which, because of the pandemic last year, we had to switch to virtual. So in that way, it's like creating the content for the summer conferences, and the games and the activities and everything that we do, and then also all the programming that happens throughout the year. So part of that is creating our own in-house programming. Part of that is connecting students with other opportunities, such as maybe Hattie Lou might be doing a speaker series that bridge builders can attend to get their bridge builder credits, or whatever else is going on in the community. And then the third level is the change level. That is our cohort-based level. And so we'll have, anywhere from 15 to 20 bridge builders who have come through the collaborate summer conferences and who want to commit to work on work in a cohort for a year, you know, on an issue or social issue that they feel passionate about and that they think is important and that they want to advance justice in that area. And so my job is to make sure that we have programming for all of those things. Now the change level is more youth, is youth led. And so their work is, you know, they're coming up with their work and they're doing the work and they're on the ground level and they're doing the planning. And in that sense, my team and I, we just, you know, if they need assistance or if they, you know, need feedback from us, and helping them think, you know, of more higher level things, that's how we interact with that cohort. And so my job is to make sure that, you know, we have programming for all those things and that we have summer team members who facilitate our summer conference. And then we also have year-long AmeriCorps staff members who facilitate all of our year-long programming and our Connect programming. And so our team makes sure that those people, that they're trained in experiential learning and they're trained and know how to work with our students and then know how to work with, you know, administration and students when they're out in the community. And then we also do the evaluating of our programs to make sure that we're doing what we say we do and that we're, you know, implementing our feedback back into the programming. So we're making changes and, you know, constantly trying to improve. And so
Gotcha.
that's what I do. I'm a Bridge Builders alum. So I came through the program like 21 years ago. And it's,
and you know what,
like
you guys
crazy.
are like real deal bridge builders out here in the I met so many verbally effective podcast guests that, you know, have that connection with bridge builders. You guys remember everything from bridge builders, you know, a big alum. And in your particular role, you know, I know you spent some time at my alma mater, Lemoyne College as well. And now you're in this particular role and focusing on leadership qualities, right? So, you know, with the kids, you know, from this particular generation going on now, what do you see as some of the biggest, I guess, pros and cons with their ability to be leaders from your work that you do? What have you been seeing, Meridith?
So, that's a great question. I think that the youth today, I think that they are extremely sharp. I think that they're a lot more, and it's interesting because I have to be specific and like, so Gen Z, because they're very different from like the millennials, and because I'm technically, you know, I'm technically a millennial, but just barely. And so it's Gen Z, which is primarily when we're talking about youth right now, is Gen Z. They're very astute, they're very capable, they're really sharp. They know more of what they want, I think, than we did. And so that's impressive to me. I'm impressed by that. I think that as far as leadership, you know, knowing what you want and being very, you know, they're not going to like just throw around a bunch of things or not really know. Like, you can't come to someone in Gen Z and say, you know, the sky is red. They're going to say, oh, is it? And they're going to pull out Google and say, no, actually the sky is not red. The sky, you know, so they're going to do their research. They're, you know, they don't just rest on, they challenge, they challenge and they push back, but not in my opinion in a disrespectful way. They kind of remind me of I guess Gen X, because Gen X did a lot of, you know, Gen X asked a lot of questions, did a lot of pushback, and I you know, that's just the way their minds work. And so I think those are all positives, particularly in talking about leadership. As far as on the other side of things, like potential for growth, you know, I think that, we're in the digital age, and I think that digital is great, and I think that there's a lot of positives from digital. Um, but I also think that digital has hindered how youth communicate.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, like one thing that I say all the time, and I don't mean this in a negative way or like an adultist way, but one thing I find myself saying a lot, I'm like, the world works on email. Like email is important, and how you communicate in email is not how you communicate in a text message, or it's not how you would communicate on an Instagram post. And so I think we can be very lax in that. And I think that sometimes we try to walk this fine line between being helpful and supportive, and also, holding high standards. And so, we have to give our youth the tools to communicate effectively, verbally. You have to be able to write. You have to be able to, express yourself in oral and written communication, because that's just the way the world works, and people will assume things of you if you don't know how to communicate well. And so I think the digital age has, while it's provided a really creative outlet and done some really great things, I think it's hindered the way that youth communicate. And so I think that's an area for growth for sure. And we've tried to address some of that too. Like we've had some communications training and to try to help with that, and then try to and you can't ignore that we are in the phase that we're in. So it's kind of like you have to try to show how you can use those things to your advantage, but still also have some of those skills that are evergreen, and that we all have to use at all times. So
Definitely. I understand what you're saying. Like with my 15-year-old Dallas, they stay on the phone. That's how they communicate, on the phone. They don't want to pick that phone up and call, right?
mm-hmm.
And I often wonder about their social skills, because you guys are on that phone all the time. And when you get in person with someone, are you going to know how to deal with the information delivered to you? For example, he plays AAU basketball. And a coach can be on your ass, right? Especially if you need it in a game. Trying to pick it up, right? Pick up the momentum, lift your spirits, but he gonna give you some constructive criticism at the same time, right? They fall apart when they get constructive criticism. I'm talking about I'm like, Dallas, I understood what the coach said. You didn't hear what I heard, but they take it so personal.
Yeah.
And I think it has to do with this digital age. I really do. Like, it's weird. It's different.
Yeah. And we don't work with college age students at Bridges. We're high school and middle school. But yeah, I saw a lot of that at working at Lemoyne too. It's and not with all students, but I think again, it's like it's very hard sometimes for people to find a balance between helping and wanting to be supportive, and also challenging. And so when you you take a place like Lemoyne that's open access, and that a lot of the students coming in just simply have not had access to a certain kind of education, or maybe have not had, they may be first generation college students, or they're coming with their own set of challenges. And so for that reason, like you want to do what you can to make up for those challenges, because you want to feel like you're giving them a fair shot, or trying to put them on as equal footing as possible. But if you're not careful and you do, it's kind of like it's like the giving a man a fish versus teaching him to fish.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. It's like you want to help, but like there's something to be said for earning things. And that doesn't mean that you make things difficult for people. It means that you teach them that there's no substitute for hard work. And, and that doesn't mean that, that's not to say that, everybody can get what they need just by working hard. We know that's not true. We know that, particularly if you're a minority in, institutional racism and disenfranchisement and so many things have contributed to, our not being on equal footing. But at which point that someone is giving you opportunity, there's something to be said for honoring that and honoring yourself and putting effort into the work that you do. And it doesn't matter what kind of work it is. If it's picking up leaves, you pick up leaves with honor. If it's an English class, you handle your English homework with honor. And, there's something to be said for that. And I think that if we aren't giving, and not just youth, even adults, if we aren't giving people the opportunity to know what that feels like, to know what it feels like to have a challenge before you. And that's what a lot of Bridges is too.
Yeah.
It's something is challenging before you, and I'm not gonna hand you the answer at Bridges. I'm gonna make you figure it out. That's part of the experiential learning process. And so that makes a difference. But if you come up in an environment where you're not having the opportunity to work through those things and work for those things, then you get to a point where you think it's owed to you. And then that creates, a whole different issue. And so, college, high school to college, it's an interesting time. It's a transitional time. And I have had to, what makes me happy is like I see some of my former students at Lemoyne and like they're doing so well. Like I just saw that one who was in one of the STEM grants I worked on. She's about to go to dental school.
Awesome.
And then, I just see, when I see them, doing great things, like that's what makes me feel good. And that's what it's all about. But yeah, it has its challenges for sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. Now, you know what? You're very busy. You're very active on social media as well. I follow you on Instagram. Not only are you very involved in your career, you're a mom, you have 2 boys, you have a husband, you are a plant mom, you're out there in that garden, getting them plants together, giving us tips. Also involved in yoga. You are a new yoga instructor, received your certification. How do you balance it all, Meridith?
That's a good question. And I think my short answer is, like I control my time. Like I try not to let other people control my time. Time is just it's just an asset that we can't get back. And so I use my time. I'm not even the best at time management. Like I could be better at time management, but I do use my time on things that I want to do, and that I think are important. And so, I don't let a whole lot of people monopolize my time, oh, you got to come to this or do this or do that. And I'm like, well, no, I mean, it's okay if I don't. You can say no.
So you know
Your
how
family,
to say
yeah, your family is not gonna hate you if you don't come to your cousin's, sister's, brother's, oldest son's birthday party. Like it's fine. Like you don't have to go to everything and be all places all the time. Like sometimes you have to say no. And saying no to something allows you to say yes to something that is in line with a vision that you have for yourself. So I think that's important. I think we allow, especially women, especially Black women, we allow ourselves to get pulled in too many different directions. And sometimes, you have to stop and say, is doing this going to put me any closer to building a relationship that's important to me, or a goal that I've outlined for myself, or something? And if it's not, then it's okay. Like sometimes it's just okay to skip something. It's okay to say no. And then like there are some things that particularly if it's something that's going to take up a significant amount of time, like this yoga certification that I just got, that took a lot of time. And so there are things that going into it, I had to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to hang out or have free time on these weekends. I'm not going to be able to, because my focus is going to be on what I'm trying to accomplish right now. And so that has a lot to do with it. Then also having support. My parents and, my husband, they're very supportive. Even my kids are really supportive. Like, my kids had to give up their mommy for some time while I was trying to get my certification. But I don't do it on my own. Having a support system helps. And I just want to say to like people who, like my husband and I, we'll be married 10 years in September. Geez, a long time, but it's pretty good for it's pretty good for our age.
Yes, it is.
But I do want to say that like a lot of times, like I get messages from people and they're like, oh my gosh, like you and your family, you and your husband, like y'all are so cool and blah, blah, blah. And I try to be, and I appreciate that, but I try to be honest as much as I can and let people know, like,
it's work.
Yes, while that is true, like and I'm not one of those people that think that when people are online and what they post, they're being fake. I don't believe that. Like, people are just so miserable. Like, some people just happy and it's fine. Like, everybody is not fake, and some people do, and I get it, but like everybody is not, it's just the highlights. You mad, you're not gonna post like, oh, I'm mad today, like it's just, it's important for people to know, especially people who are in relationships or maybe young in their relationships or in their marriages. Like, yes, it can be a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing, but it also takes a lot of work. And I don't know the amount of things that I'm able to accomplish right now. Everything has its season. Like 5 years ago, 8 years ago in my marriage, I couldn't be doing what I was doing now because we just weren't at that place yet where my husband would be like, oh, you got to spend how many hours, away from the house to get some yoga certification. He would have, 8 years ago, he would have been like, no, like, I'm not down with that. But like, so we've had to grow into that. Like and it takes time. And so I'm saying that to be honest, because if there's anybody out there that's like because you asked me like, how am I able to balance? And a big part of my being able to do that is because I have a support system. And so I don't want people to think that like, oh, like you just got it all together. And balance is important to me. And it is something that I'm intentional about. So I do say be intentional, but I also want to make sure that people know it's because I have a support system. And if you feel like you don't have a support system or you're not there yet, it doesn't mean that it can't happen, because I don't think I could do what I'm doing now, earlier on in my marriage. We just weren't there yet. We understand each other better now. He has a better idea. I've been able to better communicate. He has a better idea of my vision for myself and why it's important and why his supporting me in doing that is good for our family. I have a better vision of his personal goals and what he wants and why it's important for me to support. Because there's some things that my husband has wanted to do too. And I haven't always been supportive, but we've had to grow into that space. My husband is more of a risk taker. I'm not a risk taker. And I'm especially not a financial risk taker. It scares me, but like there's things that he's into real estate. And there's things that in the past, I'm like, no, I don't want to do that because it's scary to me. But like, we've had to grow into learning how to support each other. So that's how I'm able to do a lot of the things that I do. So I just encourage people out there, like, if you feel like there are things you want to do and maybe you're not in that place yet, like keep going, like you'll get there. It just takes a little intention, but you'll get there.
I feel you. And it does take time with a marriage, time learning each other, growing as a family, figuring out what you want to do. So I applaud you guys. 10 years is a big number. It is definitely a big number. And I just want to thank you, Meridith, for being my guest today on the Verbally Effective Podcast. We have learned so much about your amazing journey, making moves. Once again, congratulations on the Memphis Business Journal Top 40 Under 40. I hope you enjoy. Look, I hope you enjoy the outing that they're going to give you guys coming up very soon. Now, how can everyone follow you on social media and get in touch with you?
So you can follow me. I have a couple different sites. You can follow me. My personal Instagram is it's m.m.m. So MDOT. My website is my first name, last name.com. So meridithrucker.com. meridithrucker.com. And then the Instagram for my website is the same thing. It's my first name, last name on Instagram. And yeah, so, if you're into plants, then, I have a plant page on IG. It's Here She Grows Again. So,
Yeah.
That's where all my plant babies and stuff is. So, yeah.
Check her out, Verbally Effective Audience. She gives great tips, walks you through everything. Y'all know I'm a plant mom too, so make sure you check out my soror Meridith Rucker on the gram. And thank you so much, Meredith. You making moves out here. Just continue to work. Continue that balance. It's amazing that you have a wonderful support system, because that does matter. That definitely matters. I understand.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I got work. There's work in the future with me and you and Suna, and I that podcast workshop that y'all did was really, really excellent. I tell people about it all the time, and I have something that I want to do. I gotta get to the right time, but I'm definitely going to be reaching out to y'all.
Let me know.
I will.
Yeah. But thank you so much, my guest today on the Verbally Effective Podcast, my soror Meridith Rucker. Thank you, lady.
Thank you.